Okay, everyone. Thank you for staying online for so long. Now I want to introduce our final and main keynote speaker, Jakob Trollbäck, and to give his perspective on this. I am so happy that you wanted to join us today, Jakob. It's a big honor to introduce you and to welcome you to the stage. And I will give you the stage. And I see that you have the well, of course. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. And I had a little bit of a shock when I came here and realized that this presentation was in English, which is most of my presentations. But I was thinking, oh yeah, this is, I think I can do this in Swedish. So during this conversation, I have converted the presentation. So I think that there's no Swedish left in it. It's also a very intense presentation because there is so much you can say about this. So I'm going to jump in and hold on to your whatever, and let's go. There was some conversations earlier about the the UN development goals, and I'm just going to talk about that for 30 seconds. We got a document that was really incomprehensible, and we were thinking, how do we make this into something that we can understand, that the world can understand? So we started to make this language easier, and was like, what can we cut down? So we just cut everything in the language to make it just as simple to understand as possible. So end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture just became no hunger, etc. And I don't even going to read this one, but this is goal 15, which after all of these definitions is just life on land. So after we had done that, we had sort of a framework that we could start to sketch around and finding images leading to an early version of the goals that we came up to the UN with, and
just gonna go on.
Yeah, that we walked up to the UN with, and they were very happy because they had questioned if it was actually possible to communicate 17 goals to people. Somewhere along the line, we are making the screen a little bit bigger.
I think. There we go.
There you go. Look at that.
There we go. Look at that.
So basically everything changed as we were doing this. Goal 14 was the first one that we figured out, and after that was 15, and then came 12, I think, and they were sort of moving on. They had different names also, and goal 17, partnership for the goals, was called Global Consciousness in our first sketch, which is actually a better name. The UN thought that maybe I had been smoking pot or something, because global consciousness, who understands what that is? Today, it means something more. So, and now I'm gonna, so we decided we needed to have 17 colors, and those are the colors. It was not very easy to find 17 colors that looked great together, and we're also discernible in between them. So the final result is there, and you've all seen that. So I'm going to move on. We can do another presentation another day where I can talk for about an hour about every goal. It was a 6-month processes. And this is Christina Rigg-Dressley, who was my partner in this, who's a lead designer and brilliant. Without her, we wouldn't have such a beautiful system. So to today's topic then. So innovation in the key of sustainability. I was thinking about that the other day and started to think, oh, that's totally a Stevie Wonder song. So I had a presentation where I started to play songs in the key of life, and it sort of worked, but not in the today's quicker take. So why is sustainability important? It's the first thing to ask. Right? So sustainability is basically about caring. It's about caring, also known as giving a shit. It's about caring about things we share. It's about caring about other people's things. It's about caring about our fellow humans. It's about caring about our consumption. These are cell phone chargers by the great photographer Chris Jordan, about what we leave behind. It's about caring about the world around us. It's about caring about our quality of life. And of course, it's about caring about the next generation. And it's cute when we actually have a reason to put in your kids in the presentation. So they're a lot bigger now. But anyway, so these are all things like fundamentally what we should care about. So how do we move forward? Well, new ideas, that's the only thing that has ever moved us forward. If we rewind, this was a new idea. This is the first tool, right? But that was 3 million years ago. And this guy made them. And the fire, that was 2 million years ago, a new idea. This guy made it. And then we started to get into clothes, which was good to have for both Neanderthals and that guy also. And then we came up with art, and we made more complex, more beautiful art. And then we all of a sudden came up with agriculture. And it's also like this rush of ideas, but the time scale is pretty large here. So it goes faster. We're making the wheel just 5,500 years ago. And then somewhere here where the steam engine comes to be, this is where the industrialization starts, and innovation goes on some kind of rampage here. So innovation drives all our evolution. Innovation is a superpower. It's really what has defined us, and creativity is the driving force. So these two things, the creativity, the ideas that we have, and then a way to put this into different systems, to use the creativity to change the world around us. So this has made us the dominant species on the planet. And as they say in America anyway, if you break it, you own it. So this is definitely our mess to clean up. And people like charts. I don't really like charts. I made this up. This has no scientific background, but it's sort of how it has happened. If you take risk assignments as our chance to survive, it has, with time, as we've innovated more and more, it has just been safer and safer for us to live until we come to somewhere where it says new, now for non-Swedes, where we see that the risks now starts to increase incredibly. Innovation is just keeps on going. But we need to change in order to survive. And then we have to consider that every innovation has a direction. We don't have to continue to drive innovation that makes it harder to live on this planet. It's up to us to set the direction of the innovation, because innovation could go on and actually accelerate even more, but the curve, we could start to bend the curve of the dangers that we have created for ourselves. We're not going to flatten it out, because the next 50 or 100 years is going to be just rife with challenges because of the heating and the loss of biodiversity that we have created already. So, but nothing can stop this move towards sustainability, not even very successful business models, because the sustainability, well, I'm going to come to that in a second. So what is sustainability? Brundtland report says it was meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that's all fair and good. And they also said that there are 3 dimensions of sustainability: financial, environmental, and social. So these 3 dimensions were something that we should think about. And a few years later, 7 years after the Brundtland report, John Elkington put them together and called this the triple bottom line. And he had a great idea, and John Elkington is a brilliant guy, of that we need to take all of these three and make sure that they're all part of the equation. But at the same time, we had different financial pressure. We had a guy called Milton Friedman. We had deregulation and market economy. We had Reagan and Thatcher, and they just believed that if people make money, everything else is we're gonna fix everything. I mean, Milton Friedman even thought that we should release heroin, because heroin would be controlled by market. He was a little bit nutty, that guy, but for so long people listened to him, because this gave people a carte blanche to just be mega capitalists and also feel good about it, because, I think you mentioned triple down earlier in the presentation. There was some kind of idea that if a few guys get insanely rich, everyone is going to prosper. So instead, I think you should play with something where you look at economy as a result of creating environmental and social values, instead of trying to get them saying that we can benefit them all. What is the driving forces? Where does it come from? And if you think about it, all the values that we can create that are positive will be environmental or social. And you can play around with this a lot, because as a company, you can also start to think about the taxes as you pay as social benefits. So you can really look at your models in a pretty interesting way. And then today, of course, we need to judge how sustainable companies are. And many of you, maybe all of you, know these three letters, ESG. So I'm not going to go through all of that, but I'm going to make one little observation, because, on the environmental side, we're talking about carbon emissions and water pollution, biodiversity, deforestation, etc., etc. On the social side, the list I had here started with customer satisfaction. I would probably not put that at the top, but you have gender and diversity, employee engagement, human rights, labor standards, etc. And finally then, governance, which is sort of interesting, because this is sort of when you turn the lens towards the company itself, because you talk about bribery and corruption, which has always been part of code of conduct, but is still something that drives a third of the economy in the world. You have lobbying, you have executive compensation, and that's really great that those questions comes into focus. So, but when you look at all of this, and if you're a company and you're thinking, this is a lot of checkbox that I have to figure out, there's something else that you can use to figure out where to land in this. And that is just what feels right. Like, good companies needs to be driven about what feels right, and think what is the conclusion of what you're doing. And if you go back to this, carbon emissions, that can't feel right. Human rights, to not, that's something that you want to be a good person, right? Lobbying, like paying money to override people's will, that can't feel right. Fine, there are lobbying that is about informing politicians about what's happening in society, but etc. All of these lens things, you can use a lens that is much more simple, that goes together to the sustainability thoughts in the beginning of caring about things. So, and ESG is now becoming sort of a driver's license for attracting investors, which is hugely positive. This means that there's a whole new world of opportunities if you understand sustainability. And understanding sustainability, I think the 17 global goals is a great way to start to think about it. But there's also a lot of complexity. So when I'm looking at Brundtland's report's definition of this, I feel like there's something else that appeals to me, that has to do with the whole situation, with the complex world that we're living in. So 35 after this, is there a more usable definition? Well, first of all, complexity is the result of many, many simple equations. You just add them together, and all of a sudden they start to interact, and you get complexity. So that means that in a complex world, even the small equations are important. Small equations can have an outsized effect on the whole world. We've been talking about these goals, and I think this is going to be in Swedish, but it's an integrated agenda. It's basically English. So what does that mean? That means that the 169 targets that you have, they're interfacing with all each other. So this is really how the goals should look. This is how they cross-pollinate, and how they can help each other, and how they can work against each other in some cases. So you have to understand this whole thing. So we realize that the 17 goals, they're categories, and the targets are the real goals. And I understand that the UN didn't go out and say, here's 169 new goals. So they made them, put them into categories, and just said, okay, these are the goals, and these, we call them targets or something like that. So these targets, if the 17 goals were complex, these were just nutters. So information is not communication. That was the first thing when I was working with this. Oh my God, they think that this is communication in some way. So this is an example of a target that was like enhanced north, south, and triangular, regional, and international cooperation on and access to science, technology, and innovation, and enhanced knowledge sharing on mutually agreed terms, including through improved coordination amongst existing mechanisms, in particular at the United Nations level, and through a global technology facilitation mechanisms. And there's no periods there, because nobody in this whole, in politics at the UN, wants to be in a second sentence. Everything, like, I'm not in the second sentence. My thing should be first, or in the first sentence. So you have this kind of nonsense that comes out. But if you look at this, you see that this is about cooperation and knowledge sharing and access to science. And so we clean it up, and it's actually knowledge sharing and cooperation for access to science, technology, and innovation. That's probably one of the most important targets that there is, that has been cloaked in this nonsense. So we went through all of these 169. We made a little icon for it also, because we like that. And then we had a long conversation whether we should make 169 more icons. But I was thinking about the periodic table of elements, and I said, hell yes, we should definitely do that. So you could say that the 169 targets, that's the world's new periodic system. Here, this is as covering as you can become. You can mention anything, literally anything, and you can find it covered in some way, if not completely directly, indirectly. Maybe the weakest point is culture, but cultural heritage is in it. So we made some tools so people can work with this, and all of this is available online. You can download it from the New Division's website, or from the Global Goals website. So just to quickly see how relevant the targets are. Well, fight communicable diseases seems appropriate. Support research, development, and universal access to affordable vaccines, also pretty good. Early warning systems for global health risks, universal health coverage, social protection systems, effective, accountable, and transparent institutions, public access to information, and of course, the flip side of it, the atrocious amount of violence against women and children that has come in COVID's wake. So most of these problems can be predicted and avoiding if we can understand complexity, and this is a really good tool for that. So if sustainability is a result of simple equations that are solved in the best way, then you can say that sustainable solutions don't create new problems, which it means that sustainability means to create the most elegant equations. And this is where I get lit up, because I have some kind of OCD when it comes to many things, and always had a problem with things that doesn't quite fit together. And you can imagine, like, actually, if you want to ask me what the happiest moment in the whole development of the SDGs was that there's 17 symbols, and we had two rows of 6, one row of 5, and then we had a little square down there. It was driving me nuts. And one day I was like, oh my God, we put the logotype there. And that made my whole week. I was just like flying. We don't have to release something that is not put together in a nice way. Anyway, there it is. I made it in red also because I think this is something that we can think about, creating the most elegant equations. Because to me, I'm a very emotional person. Like if I watch This Is Us or Ted Lasso or anything like that, I'm like crying through the whole thing. But my engagement in these questions is not emotional in a weird way. They're logical. I like systems that works, and this system doesn't work. The system that we have built, and I think that that's kind of a superpower when you're going up against industries and big business, because you can actually come and show that your equations doesn't add up. You can say, okay, forget about indigenous people now, if you must, but destroying that land is gonna hurt us all. Like you should never tell anyone to forget about indigenous people, but you know what I mean. It's like you can move the equation into something that maybe is closer to their realm of figuring out like cost benefit analysis. And in that comes a second red slide, which is that there's nothing as dangerous as old ideas that are still profitable. This is what we're fighting against. Like, and not, some of them aren't even profitable anymore. Like all of the oil and gas subsidies it's just shameful, because but a lot of people still make money on it. So how do we lead the change in the right direction? So this is a new thing that we have been working on for the last 2 years, because we were saying we have these goals. Everyone should look at them and see what the path is. Why is so little happening? And we started to think that it all starts with ourselves. It starts with how we are creating things. We realized that, well, if you are a person who has a lot of enemies and can't make friends with them, you're probably not a good world leader, because you're probably not going to make friends out in the world. There's a lot of our personal qualities. So we have done a research, worked on this actually for 2 years, and we've asked over 1,000 people, scientists and people working in conflict solutions, people working in all kinds of fields, what talents, what skills do you need to solve these issues? So there are 23 skills in 5 categories, and we've strangely enough, we haven't created a design system to it yet, but it is in the work. But we felt that this is so cool, so we wanted to bring it out a little bit early. So the 5 categories starts with things inside ourselves, our relationship to ourselves, our being. And then cognitive skills are thinking, and then caring and relating to the world around us, and then collaborating, and finally driving change. And we've gotten like these upvoted skills are just lovely. If you look at being relationship to self, it starts with inner compass, having a deeply felt sense of responsibility and commitment to values and purposes relating to the good of the whole. Meaning, maybe you're not going to throw your electric scooter on the street or stomp on someone's bicycle. Integrity and authenticity, openness and learning mindset. That is something that, the third point there, if we don't have that, no one is going to fix anything. Awareness and presence. So these are like things that defines ourselves. And then when it comes to thinking, then it's more like critical thinking, complexity awareness. I talk a lot about complexity, perspective skills, seeing other points of views, seeing patterns, sense making, and of course, long-term orientation and visioneering, something that today's capitalism is dearly short on, because today it used to be a way for companies to say that, well, this is where we're going to be in 5 or 10 or 50 years. It's very hard for them to do that today and know anything, which is why it's so important that you do that. Relating, appreciation, connectedness, humility, empathy, compassion, totally necessary skills for being able to work with other people at all. And then you have collaborating, you need to have communication skill, co-creation skill, inclusive mindset, intercultural competence, trust, mobilization skills, and finally, under acting, courage, creativity, optimism, perseverance. And this is the one slide that has a little kink in it, because creativity is all that I'm driven by, in a sense, and music, of course. But creativity is actually like all of these skills. I look at them as atoms that you put together and you build different things. And creativity is definitely a molecule. You can't be creative by yourself. It's backed up by a lot of these molecules, like openness and perspective taking. So there was my a little bit rushed presentation. It's so thinking about equation, thinking about like what is sustainability, what is our role in the whole thing, and this you can find it on innerdevelopmentgoals.org, and you're going to see when updates are coming. We're having conferences, etc. in that. And finally, I wanted to give you a toolbox for personal and professional success. If you have these 3 skills, if you're warm, you're honest, and you're competent, you just can't miss. You just cannot miss in life. So strive for all of these 3, and everything is going to be a-okay. Thank you.